Mate, cervecita, vinito, agua, lo que quieras para acompañar este podcast. Simplemente vos y tu escucha. Mi nombre es Ignacio Esteller, me dicen Nato, y te doy la bienvenida a nuestros podcasts. A los podcasts de EG. ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo les va? Espero que estén muy, pero muy bien. Bienvenidos a otro podcast de EG. Estoy muy contento, han tenido mucha repercusión. Recuerden que lo pueden escuchar en todas las plataformas de podcast, las más conocidas, Spotify, Apple Podcast, y también lo estamos subiendo a nuestro canal de YouTube. A continuación, no se pierdan esta charla que tuve con Benjamin Davies. Benjamin Davies es inglés, vive hace mucho tiempo en la Argentina y es el director del Colegio San Andrés de Buenos Aires. Hace un tiempo atrás decidió él y toda su comisión y todos sus colaboradores elegir la metodología EG, esta metodología innovadora de educación que está basada en principios científicos que hablan sobre la cooperación. Decidió implementarlo, decidió utilizar esta metodología en su colegio, uno de los colegios más importantes de Argentina, uno de los colegios también que es pionero en innovación educativa. Decidieron implementarlo, lo están disfrutando muchísimo y estamos creciendo juntos. La charla es en inglés. Disculpen mi inglés porque la verdad que por ahí me largo a hablar, improviso mucho y no sé lo que estoy diciendo, pero él entiendo que me entendió. Entiendo que me entendió. Benjamin Davies, hermosa charla tuve con él, espero que la disfruten. Chau, chau. Ben, before the questions, I really like to know a little bit of your history. I don't know, like a little short time history of Benjamin. What are you doing here in Argentina? Where's your formation? What are your goals? Like a short time history. Can you tell me about it? About you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm English. My name's Ben Davies. I'm from England, and my undergrad originally was in psychology and management. So I originally studied psychology, and I'm fascinated by people and why people behave the way they do. It's kind of my calling is to try and answer that question, I think. And I didn't know I would be a teacher at this point. I just was fascinated by people. So I spent a lot of time traveling around the world, and I felt a calling to teach. And then I actually went back to university and I studied my academic passion, which is math, and became a maths teacher in the UK. And since then, I've worked in public schools in London and Manchester in the United Kingdom. I've worked in an international school in Beijing, and now I've been at San Andrés for the last 6 years. And the thing that really drives me through all of these experiences is what I've realized is not only do I want to know why people behave the way they do, but the thing that I really want to do is help to create experiences that inspire people to be the best they can be. So that's kind of my why. That's why I get up and go to work each day. It really motivates me to do that.
Great. Thank you about that. Thank you. So we can start with the first question, that is, why did you decide to implement a new education tool like EG and this method in your school, a school with a lot of history, and you decide to innovate in education? What did you decide this to change things and educate in a different way with this method?
Yeah, I think first I'm not sure if it was a decision to change things. I think more when you think really deeply about education, any educational framework looks at two things. There's kind of a theoretical framework, the content, the information to be learned, but then there's also certain skills and abilities that need to be developed. And education's been calling for that to happen forever, really. And the reason why I wanted to move my classes in St. Andrews in the direction of using a tool like EG was because part of what I should be doing as an educator, and part of why I want to be a teacher, is because I want to develop real life-worthy skills in the kids. I want kids that are leaving school already with, skills of communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, with a good character, good self-awareness, etc. And actually, through the academic disciplines, it's perfectly possible to develop those abilities, but you have to teach in a different way. that's been around for a long time, a more student-centered way, if you want, the way where the students are the protagonists of their learning, not where the adult is leading them through the content, so to speak. So when I heard about EGG in Mendoza and the methodology, it was just obvious for me that it was something that I wanted to explore, because it already complemented personally my teaching methods of presenting material to young people for them to engage with, for them to master, and for them to ask me questions when they were stuck. But to see this theoretical framework of how to build collaboration, and given that building collaboration really meets the same end as many educators want, which is, we want a better world for the future, and more collaborative human beings is only going to be a good thing, right? So seeing that focus on collaboration, but also seeing that by working in that way, it's not just going to develop students' collaboration, it's going to develop their autonomy, it's going to develop their self-awareness, it's going to develop their confidence, it's going to develop so many other things. It just seemed like a really obvious choice to go with it. And the methodology is super flexible, and we talk about the methodology EGG, but really, in a nutshell, it's getting out of the way of the kids and letting them learn, and encouraging them to trust each other and to trust themselves. And that's a beautiful thing for teachers to be doing, right? Bit counterintuitive often, I think. And I'd say one thing, I did it with my class last year, because before I made an institutional decision, I wanted to be like, hey, come on, how does this work? And so I did it for 2 months with a class of 20. And the results were not only did I see maybe particular development in their autonomy, their actual academic results surpassed my expectations. And for that reason, now we're in the very early stages of trying to do something more institutional. We've got, right now, while I'm talking to you, we've got some teachers in a meeting with Agostina, learning more about the methodology and how to implement it in their classes, even in the middle of the pandemic. So yeah, that's kind of why I took the decision to fully support EGG, or to endorse EGG, if you like.
Great, Ben. Ben, you said to me that what drives you is human behavior. And my next question is not on the script, but when I heard that, I thought, what is your big concern about our behavior nowadays? Or I'm sure that there is a lot of things, but like your big concern about this.
I think one of the most dangerous things in the world is that we think we know something 100%. Like, we think we know the truth, and when we think we know the truth, we're no longer curious. And that behavior really interests me, because lots of what I see as wrong in the world is because people believe that their worldview is the only worldview, and the other worldview, anyone who doesn't have that worldview, is wrong. And they might be right that their worldview is the best one, but it's far too complex an idea to just say, yeah, I'm right, you're wrong. And I really wanted to understand why people aren't more curious about ideas that aren't coherent with their own worldview, because I think that more so now than ever, what we need is we need people that are curious in the world today. We need people that aren't scared to discuss ideas. We need people that aren't scared to listen to each other. And that's the element of human behavior that really fascinates me. And actually, that, now I think about it, talking to you, that very much connects to cooperation and collaboration, right? Because that's one of the biggest barriers to cooperation and collaboration, is that people see themselves as very ideologically perhaps quite different to other people, so they don't try and collaborate.
Great, Ben. Thank you. This next question is, you already talked about this so far, but I'm a really big fan of Alejandro Jodorowsky. Like, he's a Chilean poet and thinker. He has a phrase that inspires us to think about the value we place on other people. He has this phrase, is, what I give to myself. What I keep it from myself. What do you think about this in a context of cooperation and collaboration?
Well, I mean, I think there's an obvious connection, isn't there? Firstly, that one of the first doubts maybe people have when they collaborate or cooperate is that they're helping people achieve their goal rather than focusing on achieving their own goal. And I think the point here that Alejandro is trying to make, or he makes very effectively, is that actually when I give my time and my intelligence and my attention and resource to someone else, I'm actually benefiting immensely as well as the person that I'm helping. And likewise, when I'm doing something, and if I'm not sharing it and not maybe engaging with other people about what I'm doing, I'm missing out on huge opportunities to grow. So the idea that when we work as islands, we're less effective, I think, is fundamental to what he's saying there.
Mm-hmm. Great. How can society think about educational innovation? With technology applied to educational innovation, with teamwork, with building emotional intelligence into a content, or how do you think emotional intelligence plays a role in learning today? Where do you think the innovation is located? I don't know, with technology, with teamwork, with building emotional intelligence, with all this, with one of this?
Yeah, I think actually the main educational innovation that we need is actually something more personal, which is I think we need as many educators as possible to have more of a growth mindset, more of an open mindset, so that all of these things can become possible. I think these are all tools that we know can benefit education, can lead to people having deeper learning experiences, to people becoming and growing into more rounded individuals or members of society, right? So I think that involves a lot of risk for people to change the way they think or to change the way that they've always done stuff is really difficult. The question says, how can society think about educational innovation? And I think the first thing society needs to recognize is that to change the educational paradigm, you're asking adults that already lived through that paradigm and kind of have inbuilt in them, whether they explicitly say it or not, a belief of how education should be, because they lived it. They went through it for at least 12 years, lots of them. So then you go to a new educational setting as an adult, and you inevitably start to recreate what you experienced yourself as a youngster, unless you really, really think carefully about that. And taking that leap to do something that's not familiar is very daunting for people, and people have to be prepared to be vulnerable and be prepared to take risks. So if I'm going to use technology and apply it to educational innovation in a way that is going to be meaningful, I'm going to have to take some very important risks as a professional. If I'm going to develop teamwork between students, I'm going to have to take some important risks. And the last one, which I think is probably the most important of all of these, because I think one of the biggest roles that education has to play in today's world is developing self-awareness. I think if we don't know how we're feeling and why we're feeling that way, and if we don't know what our own purpose is, it's very difficult for us to grow into successful and happy people. So building this emotional intelligence into learning today is absolutely fundamental. But to do that as adults, I mean, that one, you have to be vulnerable yourself, because if part of being emotionally intelligent is being able to show vulnerability. And actually, on that note, teaching is a very interesting profession, because you're sharing, a teacher is sharing what is often private. It's something that's precious to them, my knowledge, my experiences. I'm sharing my inner experiences in the public domain, right? I'm sharing it publicly, and that is a very risky thing to do. And so when you do that and then you take a step further and do it in a new or innovative way, it really exposes you. So I think being more predisposed to taking risks is very important.
Yes, it's like I'm open. I'm open to you. Yeah, it's like that. Yeah, sure. I'm enjoying this chat too much. About identity, we know in EGG, identity generates through teamwork. Well, here in Argentina, we like a lot football, and we feel identity about our. Well, you too in England, sure. Yeah. So how can we foster a true sense of identity in our students in their training academic process? This is tricky because in formal education, since students are forced into the system without much voice of their own, they don't feel true identity in a academic formation.
And that before I answer the question, that point about students fitting into a system, I think one of the biggest challenges all educational institutions face is changing from a model of, well, this is our institution, these are our systems, our policies, our procedures, and you either fit in with us or you go somewhere else, to instead, well, you're the student and we're going to get to know you, and then we're going to try and fit around you and create an experience around you that will help you to grow and learn. And I think that's a big challenge that all educational institutions kind of face. And quickly talking about EGG and the way that you work with the kids there, it's another reason why I'd be attracted to it, because the kids choose their own learning path, right? They decide what they're going to do at any given moment, and they have that autonomy to make decisions, which I think is really fundamental. But now, just answering your actual question about how can we foster a true sense of identity in our students, that has to start with first helping students to explore who they are. You have to go into every student, you have to accompany students on a really incredible journey into their past, right? You know, to think about what stories interested them when they were younger, what objects interested them, what members of their family inspired them, which famous people inspired them, and have plenty of time talking with kids about this so they can really start to identify patterns in their likes and dislikes and start to really find out what their calling is. Because I think for us to have a sense of purpose, we have to know who we are, why we're here, and what we want to do. And those questions are difficult for most adults to answer. And once you start dealing with adolescents, it gets even more complicated, where there's often crises of identity. So I think there has to be a huge, an important chunk of time put aside for young people to be able to explore who they are, what they want, why they want it, to understand their why a little bit more, to maybe find their own path a little bit more. And then also you then have to work with them on developing the self-awareness and the confidence to be able to follow that path, because it's scary, right? Going, you know, making your own way is very, very scary, especially if you're in a system where you're used to, you know, traditionally a school says at this time you go here, then at this time you go here, then at this time you go here. There's very little room for decision making in most schooling. And if you want kids to identify a sense of purpose, you have to give them a lot more opportunities to make their own decisions.
Ben, are you familiar of this South Korean thinker? The name is Byung-Chul Han. He studies a lot about behaviors of contemporary society. His work focuses on the world we live in, including how technology affects our lifestyle and the culture of working too much. I like a phrase of him that says, we have to get bored. Well, the quarantine and pandemic makes us a little bit more bored. Like, have time useless, I think. And young people, us too, we don't have any time to think, to philosopher, how to say filosofía, to filosofar, to
sorry.
Yeah, like we don't have the time to get bored or to think, to like chill down, right? So this thinker writes a lot of this, and young people think that they are like in a lot of things, they do a lot of things, but they really don't do anything, right? They're only, I don't know, like multitasking, doing a lot of things, but in the final way that they don't do nothing. What do you think about this? We necessarily have to get bored or to think like the ancients. I don't know.
So I'm not overly familiar with Byung-Chul Han, but I have read a few blogs where his work's been referred to, and some of the ideas that are based on like sort of the main concepts that he discusses that I connect with a lot are the idea of that secret garden and the idea of time, being that you often have to spend time doing nothing to be able to really know what it is you want to do or how you're going to do it. And I think his main point is that we're so busy in the world today that we just think we have to do more, always do more, have to do as much as we can, fill any space with action and activity and productivity. And I think his point is that that's harmful because we're not really getting to know our element, who we are, what our own purpose is, and as a result of that, it's damaging for our well-being. I want to actually share that, just thinking as I talk about this, there's a quote by the Persian poet Rumi that I think is somehow relevant to his work, and I think it goes, in order to understand the dance, one must be still, and in order to truly understand stillness, one must dance. And I feel in some ways that's related to this idea of stepping out of the race to be able to actually be more effective in the race, so to speak.
Yeah. Ben, I really thank for your time. I'm going to do it a last question, because this conversation is in the middle of a pandemic pandemic time. What should we learn about this pandemic, about this whole world changing? What do you think about this? What society must learn in this time?
I think the most obvious thing that we have to accept is that we're all interconnected. That whether there are walls or seas or whatever it is between all of us, they're irrelevant. Our actions have an impact on other people far and wide, and we need to accept that, and therefore take responsibility for the decisions we make and the actions that we choose to do. Wider than that, I think that certainly in Argentina, we've been in quarantine for over 160 days now. And if you're anything like me, you might have spent a long time living, waiting for something to happen. Like, come on. Once this is over, I'm going to do this. Once this is over, and not living in the present, waiting for something that's out of your control to happen. And I think the pandemic, certainly for us in Argentina, teaches us to not do that. You have to make the most of your present, whatever that present is, so that you can, really start to do things that make a difference to your life now, or have a positive impact on your community now, or help your friends or family or community now. And I think the pandemic, in some ways, by making us feel a bit impotent, reminds us that actually we're not, and that we should always seize the day, basically seize the current moment to do something. It's always good to do something. And the pandemic personally has taught me that, by the experience that we've lived for the last few months.
Yeah. Ben, thank you very, very much. It's a great conversation. I'm sure people will enjoy this conversation in our podcast. Thank you, my friend.
No, you're welcome. Take care.
Very nice to meet you. Gracias por quedarte hasta el final y por disfrutar estas charlas que tenemos en los podcasts de EG. La intención en cada una de las conversaciones que voy teniendo es construir nuevas ideas y conceptos en pos de entender cada vez más cómo podemos ser más colaborativos. O entender a la ciencia que nos está diciendo que hay cosas simples que podemos hacer para fomentar la cooperación. Lo que se construye en cada conversación lo llevo a otra conversación para seguir construyendo sobre eso. Te invito a que sigas escuchando. Seguinos en nuestras redes sociales, en nuestros canales de podcast, y también suscríbete a nuestro canal de YouTube, que así tenemos un montón de contenido para compartir con vos.